If you think the BBC expose is just about corrupt journalists getting their comeuppance, you're missing everything. Here's what Donald Trump said about the BBC on Monday. These are very dishonest people who tried to step on the scales of a presidential election. On top of everything else, they are from a foreign country, one that many consider our number one ally. And then here's what Trump said to Laura Ingraham a few hours after he made that post.
A lot of our allies aren't our friends either, Laura. Our allies took advantage of us on trade more than China did.
So, yes, the BBC has been caught red-handed interfering in the 2024 election. But this goes to something much deeper, something that is going to change everything you think you know about who really controls American policy. Now, let me put two of those Trump statements side by side for you. Speaking out about Britain, notice that he called it a country that many consider our number one ally. And then later he said, well, a lot of our allies aren't our friends either. He is literally leading a new American revolution, and not enough people are on board. I'm Susan Kokinda, and for decades, I've been on the front lines of that real fight. The fight to end the British imperial policies and really finish what Hamilton, Lincoln, and McKinley started. I've tracked how the British have done everything possible to destroy Trump and keep their globalist grip intact. And I'm here to tell you that we are closer than ever to dismantling that control. So if you recognize that this is your kind of fight, hit those like and subscribe buttons so we can reach more people on YouTube. Here's what I'm going to cover today. First, how the British are now out in the open with their anti-Trump operations and are panicking over what Trump and his administration are doing to dismantle their intelligence control over the United States. And second, what they're really terrified about, the economic revolution that Trump is carrying out, which threatens to end an imperial system which has plagued the world for centuries. And by the end of this, you're going to understand why their panic, BBC resignations, MI5 terror, is proof that the revolution is working and why they're losing control. So the BBC has been outed. BBC Director General Tim Davie and the head of news have both resigned after it was shown that they doctored video footage of Donald Trump on January 6th. Trump is demanding an apology and threatening to sue for $1 billion. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Here's what most people don't understand. The BBC isn't just some media company. It operates under a royal charter granted by the British Crown. It is an instrument of the British government and British intelligence, period. It's one arm of an apparatus that we've documented for years. We've shown that it was the British who were behind Russiagate, the entire operation to destroy Trump. Remember the Steele dossier? Christopher Steele, former MI6. Remember the 2018 House of Lords report that warned that a second Trump term would end the US-UK special relationship? Or remember the House of Lords hearing that I reported on back in August, where Obama's NATO ambassador admitted to the British Lords that Trump had just ended 80 years of global control. The British know what's happening, even if most Americans don't. Now, Promethean Action is committed to fixing that, because we know that the fight between the American system and the British system has been the key dynamic in the world since our revolution. And we've shown how that plays out in economics, statecraft, and culture. And that's one of the reasons why we understand what Donald Trump is really doing. So if you want to stop punching at shadows, go to Promethean Action and subscribe to our free newsletter and join the fight. Because it is starting to come out in big ways. On Monday, the New York Times openly reported that MI5, British Domestic Intelligence, is panicking over Kash Patel's FBI appointment. And they're not even hiding it. They ran a remarkable piece on November 10th titled Kash Patel's Plans for the FBI Alarm U.S. Allies, mostly the British. The article details how MI5 is in full panic mode over Patel's appointment. Why? Because Patel has made it clear he's going to investigate the origins of Russiagate, and that trail leads straight to London. The article openly talks about how the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, which is the U.S., Britain, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, was set up by Winston Churchill right after his famous Iron Curtain speech in Fulton, Missouri in 1946. Think about that timing. Churchill gave that speech to launch the Cold War and then immediately created an intelligence sharing arrangement that gave British intelligence unprecedented access to U.S. secrets. But why is the New York Times talking about this history? Because they're obviously afraid that Trump and his team are going to bust it up. In fact, Tulsi Gabbard has suspended intelligence sharing with Five Eyes on matters relating to Ukraine. And by understanding this history, you're going to better understand what a threat Donald Trump is to Britain's entire post-World War II order. Churchill and the British establishment created the Cold War framework to keep the world divided and under their control, preventing the kind of great power cooperation that FDR had envisioned before his death. FDR wanted a world of sovereign nations cooperating for mutual development. Churchill and the British Empire wanted the opposite, a world permanently divided between East and West, with London manipulating both sides. And that is exactly what Trump is overthrowing right now with his approach to Russia and China. Look at what just happened with Hungary. Prime Minister Viktor Orban visited Trump in the Oval Office last week and made clear what the dividing lines really are.
The problem is that the president has huge peace efforts, which are just splendid and very positive for the European continent and all the peoples of Europe. But at the same time, we are not unified because Brussels and the Europeans have a different approach to the war. So the only pro-peace government is the United States government and the small Hungary in Europe anyway. All the other governments prefer to continue the war.
It's Trump and Hungary versus the entire European establishment, which is really the British establishment control over Europe. That tells you everything. Now turn to China. Remember Trump's comment to Laura Ingraham? Our allies took advantage of us on trade more than China did. While the media obsesses over Trump being tough on China, something else is happening. Just recently, Kash Patel traveled to China to work on the fentanyl crisis, the modern opium war that's killing Americans. And here's the irony. MI5 is upset with Kash Patel. Meanwhile, he's busy working with China to stop drug trafficking that echoes the 19th century opium wars, which were run by the British Empire to subjugate China. The same British Empire whose intelligence services are now panicking because Trump and his administration are dismantling their control mechanisms. But as serious as these intelligence exposures are, what really has the British establishment in full panic mode is Trump's economic revolution. The British system has dominated the post-war world because the United States surrendered to imperial economic policies like free trade, floating currencies, and radical environmentalism. No president has seriously challenged this until Donald Trump. And here's what's hidden behind the affordability narrative, which is coming from both left and right. On the left, from Democrats, which was their talking point during the shutdown. On the right, to Tucker Carlson, MTG, and the Fuentes Groypers. They claim Trump is too focused on the international affairs or is in bed with billionaires and ignoring Americans who can't afford groceries. Well, here's why things aren't affordable. It has nothing to do with Trump and everything to do with what he's trying to change. In 1971, the US dollar, under pressure from the British pound, was taken off the gold reserve standard, and it became an object of financial speculation. This termination of the Bretton Woods system was the first step in the march toward the globalist hell we're living in today. You may be surprised to know that 1971 is also the year the World Economic Forum was founded to guide nations into subservience. What the British establishment is terrified of is that Trump will end their 50-year financialization of the American economy. Here's how they did it. The same financier elites who orchestrated the end of Bretton Woods pushed through legislation creating HMOs, health maintenance organizations, in 1972. Before that, healthcare was primarily a relationship between doctors and patients. Afterwards, it became a profit center for insurance companies and speculators. And who championed this financialization model globally? The City of London, with their British free trade, free market ideology, and their Wall Street partners. Obamacare was just the final stage of the spread of this cancer. And that's why Trump slammed the insurance companies and their profits. And anyone who's paying attention knows that what RFK Jr. and the team are trying to do is to make the purpose of healthcare to make you healthy, not to enrich the insurance companies or big pharma. Right now, you're simply an income extraction point for big pharma and the insurance cartels while they destroy your health. Because for them, it's not about health. It's about income streams. And that's what's happened step by step to all sectors of the economy. Mortgages were no longer an instrument to put you in a house. They became a cog in a Ponzi scheme of mortgage-backed securities, which brought us the 2008 housing crisis. And the British banks were deeply embedded in the mortgage securitization market. Same thing happened with student loans. They were turned into tradable securities, and college costs have increased by 1,200%. So what the British and their Wall Street partners have done is sucked up capital from these productive sectors of our economy, turning productive assets into simply financial speculation vehicles. Money chases money, and the physical economy has been increasingly starved over the past 50 years. So there are no productive jobs. Everyone is a consumer, engaged in a rat race to put together enough income to barely survive. The strategy of the elites, which has been the playbook of the Democratic Party, has been to compensate the loser. Throw enough money to the losers so they can stay pacified. The old Republican Party strategy was to play inside this financialized system and hope that as many lucky ones as possible could join them. Donald Trump is the first president in the post-war period to seriously challenge that by creating an economy based on production, where people will be producers and part of a functioning society which produces and then delivers healthcare, food, energy, and education. That's the importance of his tariffs and of the extraordinary deals which are bringing $17 to $20 trillion of investment into the United States for production, not speculation. The administration is supercharging many institutions in the government to redirect financial flows into real physical production. Energy Secretary Chris Wright just announced that hundreds of billions of dollars in DOE loans will be available for the massive expansion of nuclear power needed to turn us back into a manufacturing superpower. And yesterday, Stephen Miller made clear that this is the key to addressing affordability. Here's what he said.
So Thanksgiving meals are going to be 25% cheaper, but President Trump is not content with that. He is fighting to bring down the cost of every single consumer and household good. And the tax bill is going to be a huge part of this, because when we make life more affordable for our companies, for domestic industry, for domestic manufacturing, with 100% expensing, with the largest tax cuts in history, then prices are going to keep coming down. And the president is also making nuclear energy, modern, safe, reliable, clean nuclear energy to power the future. He issued 4 historic executive orders on nuclear energy. America will be the center of the nuclear energy renaissance in this country. And one more thing, Larry, AI. America under President Trump is the AI capital of the world. That's bringing in trillions of investment. That's bringing in millions of jobs. That's raising our standard of living. We are at the precipice of one of the great economic periods in the whole history of this country, Larry.
Let me highlight what he concluded there. We are at the precipice of one of the great economic periods in the whole history of this country. Now you understand why BBC executives are resigning and MI5 is panicking over Kash Patel. Trump's economic revolution threatens to turn the United States back into a sovereign producing nation again, not a subject of the rules-based order of the modern British Empire. The British Empire is desperate to keep people trapped in their post-industrial world, a world where your only identity is as a consumer or a loser or a victim. In that world, you're simply angry at Trump because you don't see perp walks or the release of the Epstein files. And that is what is obviously fueling the Nick Fuentes phenomenon among young men. What the British don't want you to realize is that Donald Trump is leading an economic revolution on the scale of the American Revolution itself. And he's rapidly drawing large parts of the world into it as well. You need to be part of that fight. So join Promethean Action as a paying member, and let's finish what our founders started. Because this is what the British Empire has been trying to snuff out ever since 1776. And their panic with BBC resignations and MI5 freakouts over Kash Patel is proof that the revolution is real and we're winning. The more Americans who grasp that we're in the final battle for economic sovereignty, the faster we win. This has been your Midweek Update. Thanks for listening.
Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at PrometheanAction.com.